Hello everyone, so today I'm going to be reviewing Do the Right Thing, which was directed by Spike Lee and came out in 1989. Now, I don't normally talk too much about the actual media and the format that I have the film in, but this is the special Criterion collection, which was only released last year actually, and it's a really special edition and it's a really nice, it gives a proper 4K resolution to the film and actually comes with its own little booklet, if you can see. I'll show you just now actually, because this is actually a very good edition of it. You actually get this little booklet and it talks all about basically Spike Lee and his vision of the film and how he was coming up with the ideas for the film. And it comes with 2 discs. You get a special features disc and the movie. But anyway, I won't talk too much about that. I just thought that would be interesting to show you, since it's something a bit different. This was quite expensive actually, so yeah, I'm very glad that I spent my money on it, to be honest, because it was well worth it, and the film itself is very good, as you'll find out as I'm going to say now. So back to Do the Right Thing. So directed by Spike Lee. This film is set in New York in a really hot, sweaty neighbourhood, and well, when I say it's a hot and sweaty neighbourhood, basically at the time this film is set, it's a really, really hot day, and most of this film just takes place in this one street, and it's a mostly black neighbourhood, although we do have an Italian-American family which run a pizza place known as Sal's, and it's run by Sal himself, who's played by Aiello, and then we have the 2 sons there. But really, there isn't a particular main character in this film. It really has a real ensemble cast to it. There are lots of different characters in this film, and we get to see different bits of what they're up to during the day. Spike Lee also does appear as an actor in this film. He plays a character called Mookie, who works at Sal's Diner, and we also get an older character known as the Mayor, who's played by Ozzie Davis, and he's actually probably one of my favourite characters in the film, because he's a very wise character, and he's a character who some of the other guys look up to because he's older, but at the same time some of the other guys maybe don't respect him very much. We also get an older lady called Mother Sister, who the Mayor is in love with, and then we get these 3 older gentlemen who are always sitting down watching the day pass by. But one of the most important characters in the film is a guy called Radio Raheem. It's played by Bill Nunn, and he spends most of this film holding a stereo up, playing music really loudly. And in this film there's often music playing, so right at the start of this film we get the song Fight the Power by Public Enemy playing. We get this excellent opening sequence, and we actually do hear this song quite a few times throughout the film when Radio Raheem is playing it. But really what this film is generally about is the racial tension in this neighbourhood. So as I said, it's a mostly black neighbourhood, but there is an Italian-American family who owns a pizza place. And one of the younger guys, he comes in and he notices that on the wall there aren't any black people on there, because it's a pizza place. There's lots of famous Italian-Americans on the wall, like Frank Sinatra, Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, and that obviously creates a bit of tension. Then we get some other incidents basically happen in this film which start to make things awkward. Going into this film right at the start, it does seem like a fairly light-hearted film. The characters seem to be enjoying themselves a fair bit. We get some light-hearted jokes in there, and what I really like is the camera angles in this film. So this film has quite a very hot, claustrophobic feel to it, because a lot of the time the camera seems to be shoved right into the characters' faces, and it's really just to make us feel like we are in a very enclosed space, like we are very claustrophobic with them, and we can really get a sense of the feeling of what these characters are going through in this situation. Now, this was the first time that I'd ever seen this film, and I didn't really know very much about it. Knew it was directed by Spike Lee, knew it's probably something to do with racism, like a lot of Spike Lee's films are. And I have to say, I think this is a fantastic film. Now, in some ways, this wasn't a film I completely enjoyed watching all the way through. It's probably not the most enjoyable film. There are some bits I really loved, and some bits were a little bit frustrating and a little bit hard to watch. But it's not necessarily a bad thing in this film, because Spike Lee manages to make this film really work. It could be seen as one of those films which is quite preachy in terms of trying to push a message, but it's not at all. It leaves a lot of the interpretation completely up to the audience. And actually, right at the end of the film, we get a quote by Martin Luther King and a quote by Malcolm X. And the two quotes actually almost completely contradict each other, with Martin Luther King almost saying that violence should never be necessary, while Malcolm X almost advocating violence when it is necessary. Obviously, these two people were very famous civil rights leaders, and that obviously links them with the theme of racism in the film. So this is certainly not going to be a film that appeals to everyone, and it can be quite dark in some places. Obviously, it deals with dark issues, and I suppose I really like this film, but there's certain parts of it maybe I didn't view as was intended. There are certain characters, well, there are certain moments in this film where we're supposed to feel sorry for certain characters. There are certain moments where we're supposed to hate certain characters. Really, it's quite obvious. Most of the characters in this film do seem quite prejudiced and do have moments where they're not supposed to be particularly likeable. However, everything really builds up towards the end of this film. Towards the end of this film is where it gets completely crazy and everyone just seems to let loose. It's just one thing after another. This is one of those films where it makes you think, you know, is this character doing the right thing? Like the title, was that the right thing to do, or whose fault is it? And at the end of the film there was so much going on that we tried to think, whose fault is it really? I'm trying not to spoil too much for it because there's lots I could give away in this film. I really don't want to spoil the ending, but there's something that happens to a certain character in this film near the end, and although it's terrible, I didn't feel as much sympathy towards the character as perhaps the filmmaker was intended to, because this character was causing lots of trouble. And we do get some characters in this film that just, well, two characters in particular that just seem to be causing loads of trouble throughout the film and just never seem happy, just seem to be making everybody else annoyed basically, and for that reason it can be hard to feel sympathy for the characters. But at the same time, the ending of the film is very tragic and quite difficult to watch. But at the same time, I really appreciate what Spike Lee was doing here and the way he made this film, because it can't have been an easy film for him to make. Obviously a very personal film for himself, and it's actually one of the only films I've seen that's directed by Spike Lee. I have seen Inside Man, which is directed by him, which was a very good film. After watching this, I'll probably check out some more of his films and see if I like more of his work. So overall, I have to say, Do the Right Thing is an excellent film. I think everybody should try and watch it, although it doesn't sound like the most appealing film. When it's a film which deals with racism, it can be quite hard-hitting and not always the most entertaining and family-friendly and enjoyable type of film. But try to go in with an open mind and make sure that you watch it to the end and you can come to a conclusion about what you think about it. And it's one of those films that people will view in different ways, which you know is a fantastic thing. People will have different viewpoints on this film. I am actually going to Do the Right Thing a rating of 10 out of 10 because having seen this for the first time, I was impressed with it that much, and I'll definitely check it out again at some point, especially after spending money on the Criterion collection behind me, which is well worth checking out because, like I said, a 4K restoration, really brilliant screen. It almost looks like a new film. And before I go, I'll also mention Samuel L. Jackson appears in this film and he's a narrator. So, you know, Samuel L. Jackson is brilliant in everything, isn't he? So just for that reason alone, it's worth checking out. So there we go. So that is my review of Do the Right Thing. So what do you guys think? Have you seen Do the Right Thing? Would you like to see it? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Please let me know down in the comments what your thoughts are. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.